So guys, our next topic is Francisco de Almeida. Now what is happening is, in 1505, the King of Portugal appointed a governor in India for 3-year term and equipped an incumbent with sufficient force to protect Portuguese interest. Francisco de Almeida was newly appointed governor and was asked to consolidate the position of Portuguese in India and to destroy Muslim trade by seizing Aden, Ormuz and Malacca. Okay. Now, what is the important point here is, he was the governor. He was the governor, and second point was, he was asked to consolidate the position of Portuguese in India. Okay. So he had this intention, and how he was going to consolidate. To consolidate means to gather or to strengthen. Okay. He was given this goal that you have to go to India and consolidate the position of Portuguese in India. But how you are going to do that is by destroying Muslim trade. By destroying trade. And you don't need to note down how he was going to destroy the Muslim trade, just by destroying Muslim trade. Okay. Now, he was also advised to build fortress at Anjadiva, Cochin, Kannur and Kilwa. What Almeida, however, encountered along with opposition of Zamrin was threat from Mameluke Sultan of Egypt, encouraged by a merchant of Venice whose lucrative commerce was now at risk due to the Portuguese interference. The Egyptian raised a fleet in Red Sea to stop the advance of Portuguese. Now, all politics is happening over here. I will just explain you. He was advised to build fortress at Anjadiva, Cochin, Kannur and Kilwa. Now what we are going to do here is, he did not build the fortress. If he could have built the fortress, then we would have noted down that he built the fortress. He was advised to build the fortress, and then there is no detail given whether he did or not. And then what next is happening is, when Almeida encountered along with opposition of Zamrin was threat from Sultan of Egypt. So Almeida was getting threat from Sultan of Egypt. Encouraged by merchant of Venice, whose lucrative commerce was now at risk due to Portuguese interference, and because Portuguese were interfering, the merchants of Venice were encouraged to fight against them. Egyptian raised fleet in Red Sea to stop advance of Portuguese. So basically what is happening is, here are Portuguese versus Egyptians. So because Portuguese were keen to acquire the trade in the Indian Ocean, and many of the other competitors found that, so they were very keen to send Portuguese away. So all the tussle is happening over there. In 1507, Portuguese squadron was defeated in naval battle of Diu by combined Egyptian and Gujarati navies. Now next what is happening is, they are defeated. Okay, Portuguese are defeated in this battle. Okay, you don't need to remember all this point. I am just trying to explain you, that is why I am writing. Almeida's son was killed, and in this battle Almeida's son was killed. Next year Almeida avenged his defeat by totally crushing 2 navies. Okay, now next year Almeida decided to take revenge and he crushed both the navies, Egyptian navy and then one more people are and Gujarat navies. Okay, Gujarat navies and Egyptian navies both were crushed. Almeida's vision to make Portuguese master of Indian Ocean, his policy was known as blue water policy. Now this is what is important. His blue water policy. What was blue water policy? Almeida's vision to make Portuguese master of Indian Ocean. Okay, so in this part only this much is important, that Almeida was governor. He was given the responsibility to consolidate the position of Portuguese in India. How? By destroying Muslim trade, and then all the politics is happening, and then blue water policy. That was Almeida's vision to make Portuguese master of Indian Ocean. Okay, only this much is important. Now next point. Next is Alfonso de Albuquerque. Okay, now Albuquerque, who succeeded Almeida as Portuguese governor in India, was the real founder of Portuguese power in India. Again, he was the governor who succeeded Almeida, and he was, what are they saying? He was real founder of Portuguese power in India. Okay. A task he completed before his death. So he made Portuguese the power in East. Okay. He secured for Portugal strategic control on Indian Ocean by establishing bases overlooking all the entrances to the sea. There were Portuguese strongholds in East Africa, off the Red Sea, Ormuz in Malabar and Malacca. The Portuguese under Albuquerque bolstered their stronghold by introducing a permit system for other ships and exercising control over major shipbuilding centers and regions. So what Albuquerque did was, he marked the presence of Portuguese at all the important locations. Okay, that is East Africa, Malacca, Malabar. Okay, and then how did he do this? He introduced permit system for other ships, and he tried to exercise control over the shipbuilding centers in the region, because when you are exercising control over the other ships, automatically means that you are trying to put more and more your ships, that you are trying to extend your influence in that region. So the next important point is, he introduced permit system for other ships. Okay, now the non-availability of timber in the Gulf and Red Sea region for shipbuilding also helped Portuguese in their objectives. He acquired Goa from Sultan of Bijapur in 1510. In 1510, he is acquiring Goa from Sultan of Bijapur. Okay. The principal port of Sultan of Bijapur became the first bit of Indian territory to be under Europeans since the time of Alexander the Great. Okay, so this was Goa was the first Indian territory under Portuguese. Okay. An interesting feature of his rule was abolition of sati. Okay, he also made efforts for abolition of sati. The Portuguese men who had come on voyages stayed back in India were from Albuquerque's day encouraged to take local wives. In Goa and the province of North, they established themselves as village lords, often building new roads, irrigation works, introducing new crop, tobacco and cashew nut or better plantation varieties of coconut, besides planting large groves of coconut to meet the need of coir, rigging and the cordage. In the cities such as Goa and Cochin, they settled as artisans and master craftsmen. Beside being traders, most of such Portuguese came to look up upon their new settlement rather than Portugal as home. So, what is happening over here? Because he has established the trade over there, he is encouraging the other Portuguese men also to come there. And when the other men are coming there for trade, he is encouraging them to take local wives. So, encouraged to take local wives, and they established themselves because they were trading and living there. They were trying to create the influence and monopoly. So they also established themselves as so the whole concept is they are trying to settle in Goa. Okay, building new roads, irrigation work, so they are doing all kinds of work because they are trying to settle in. Introducing new crop like tobacco and cashew nuts. So they introduced new crops like tobacco and cashew nut. They also what did they do? They also introduced plantation varieties of coconut. Okay, also introduced plantation varieties of coconut. Okay, now and in cities such as Goa and Cochin, they settled as artisans also. Okay, so what is happening under Albuquerque is that the last line written over there is most of such Portuguese came to look upon their new settlements rather than Portugal as home. So they took Goa as their new settlement and they were trying to sink it. Okay, now Nino da Chunha. So I'm going to write it over here. But these are not much important points, so we are going to just write the important point, read once, try to understand and then move on, and then next point will be favorable condition for Portuguese. Now what is happening with Nino da Cunha? Nino da Cunha assumed office as governor of Portuguese interests in India in November 1529. He joined as governor in 1529. Okay. Almost a year later, shifted headquarters of Portuguese government in India from Cochin to Goa. So what is it doing? Shifted headquarters from Cochin to Goa. As we have seen earlier that Goa fort was acquired, and then Albuquerque did much of work in Goa, so he shifted the headquarters from Cochin to Goa. Okay. Now Bahadur Shah of Gujarat, during his conflict with Mughal Emperor Humayun, secured help from Portuguese by ceding them in 1534 the island of Bassein with its dependencies and revenue. So what is happening here is Bahadur Shah of Gujarat took help from Portuguese in one of its battle. Which battle with whom, that is not important. And then in return what he got? In return, because Portuguese helped him, what he gave? He gave island of Bassein. So now one more territory is getting added to the Portuguese account. Initially they had Goa, now they had Bassein too. He also promised them base in Diu. Now third territory is coming. He also promised, okay, didn't give, base in Diu. Okay, so he said, if you help me, I'll give you island of Bassein and then base in Diu. So after that, after the battle, what is happening now we'll see. Okay. However, Bahadur Shah's relation with Portuguese became sour when Humayun withdrew from Gujarat in 1536. But what is happening is his relation, Bahadur Shah promised all this, but his relation with Portuguese then went sour. Okay. So since the inhabitants of town started fighting with Portuguese, Bahadur Shah wanted to raise a wall of partition. Opposing this, Portuguese started negotiation, and in course of which the ruler of Gujarat was invited to Portuguese ship and killed in 1537. Now what is happening? A fight is happening between Nino da Cunha, Portuguese, and Bahadur Shah. Bahadur Shah wanted to raise a wall of partition, but then he is called to the ship and then he is killed. Okay. Da Cunha also attempted to increase Portuguese influence in Bengal by settling many Portuguese nationals there, with Hooghly as their headquarters. Now what is the important thing he is doing over next is try to increase Portuguese influence in Bengal. And how he is trying to increase the influence in Bengal? By settling Hooghly as their headquarters. So in Nino da Cunha, only these are the important points. He was governor in 1529. He shifted headquarters from Cochin to Goa. Bahadur Shah took help from Portuguese, and in return he gave island of Bassein, and then he promised base in Diu, but a fight happened between them. He killed Bahadur Shah was killed, and then in the end he tried to increase the influence of Portuguese in Bengal by settling the headquarters settling Hooghly as their headquarters. Okay. Now favorable condition for Portuguese. What are the how the conditions were favorable for Portuguese? In India, excepting Gujarat, ruled by powerful Muhammad Begra in 1458 to 1511, the northern part was much divided among many small powers. In the Deccan and Bami kingdom was breaking up into smaller kingdom. Okay. Now all this, what are the things that were advantageous to make Portuguese a power? All things, all factors are mentioned over there. So the first factor was northern part was divided. There was no unity, okay, among small powers. So there was not a strong point of power. Okay, Deccan and Bahmani kingdom were breaking up. So the second is Deccan and Bahmani kingdom were breaking. Okay, so this was the weak point. This was also the weak point, and this worked in the favor of Portuguese, or Portuguese took advantage of this thing. Okay, the next is none of the power has navy worth. So the third weak point was no navy. Nor they think of developing their naval strength. In Far East, imperial decree of Chinese emperor limited the navigational reach of Chinese ships. So the fourth point was that because there was some political issue in China, the navigation was limited and Chinese ship also could not enter. As regard to Arab merchant and ship owners who until then dominated Indian Ocean, they had nothing to match the organization and unity of Portuguese. Moreover, Portuguese had cannons placed on their ship. So the fourth point was no Chinese influence. Okay, about Arabs, that is, they could not match Portuguese in organization and other skills. And sixth point was ships had cannons. So the point here is what are all the factors that favored Portuguese to establish their dominance as they were planning to do so. The first factor was the Indian kingdoms were not united. Okay, the northern part was divided into small powers, so there was no unity to oppose them. Then in southern side, Deccan and Bahmani kingdom were breaking. So here also there were issues. Then there was no naval strength, whereas Portuguese, as we have read, were very strong. Then there was no Chinese influence. Then the Arab intermediaries who were earlier the master over there, they had their presence over there, but they could not match the Portuguese organization skills and other skills, so they lacked there. And ships had cannons, and because of these cannons they were able to face any of the enemy. They were able to conduct fights and wars and win them and then take over that region. Okay, so all these factors worked in the favor of Portuguese. Now next we are going to do Portuguese state. Okay.